CCTV Camera World is proud to provide support for products purchased from our website. If you purchased your product from another vendor, please contact the vendor you purchased from for further assistance.
In this video, we're going to show you how to set up a hybrid wired and wireless security camera system using a PoE NVR, PoE wired cameras, and wireless IP cameras. I've got a wired camera already hooked up using a wire going back into my NVR, a wireless camera transmitting wirelessly back to my router that in turn where the NVR is connected, and NVR is fetching the video through the router from the camera. So there are two modes of communication happening. I've got a PoE NVR that has PoE ports built in, a wired camera connected directly to it, and a wireless camera talking to it through my Wi-Fi router. So if you've got a situation where you need some wired cameras and wireless cameras, this is the way to go. You can have the benefit of using professional security cameras, some PoE and some wireless that talk to each other to the same NVR, so you can record everything in one box and view them all from one app and have good, accurate motion detection and motion alerts going back to your app or email if required. Let's show you how to set up this system. Here is a close-up view of the NVR. So it has 4 PoE ports. NVRs come in different varieties. They come in 4-channel, which have 4 ports for 4 wired cameras, or they come in 8 channels, which have 8 PoE ports in the back, 16-channel, which have 16 ports for hardwired PoE cameras in the back, and even 32 channels. But when the 32 channels, you look at a PoE NVR, they will still only have 16 PoE ports. So you have 16 hardwired cameras that can do plug and play directly into the back of the NVR. So when you have a 32 channel NVR, keep in mind it supports 32 cameras but only has 16 ports in the back, and you add additional cameras using either a PoE switch or your router, or in this case you could even do some wireless cameras through the router back into the NVR, so you can have, like, let's say 16 wired cameras and several other wireless cameras depending on the size of your network. So let's go over the anatomy of a PoE NVR. You've got a power cord here coming in. Now this is a mini 4-channel NVR. It only has 4 ports in it, and it only takes 4 connections. So there's another connection underneath it right here. Let me remove my cable. As you can see now, it has 4 ports here, a power connection input. Some actually have a 110 input. I'm not going to go into that one, but some have a 110 socket. This is a LAN connection, local area network connection. This goes to your router. That is the main router in your network, so it can talk to the internet and you can watch it from your phone when you're away from home or business. In this case, I'm using a VGA monitor. This is what a VGA connection looks like. This goes to your computer monitor. These are RCA inputs and outputs for optional two-way audio that some of our NVRs support. The audio does not get recorded on the cameras. It's for bi-directional talk in certain cases where you can use our two-way audio kit to accomplish that. This is an HDMI input for a HD monitor or TV, and this is a USB mouse port as well. There's another USB port in the front, but in this case I have mine plugged in, or you could even use this USB port to have a flash drive to back up video from the NVR so you can provide it to law enforcement. In that case, the mouse would get connected to the front. So in this case, if you had only a completely wired system, you would use up all 4 of these. But if you're doing a wireless and wired hybrid system, which I'm going to cover in this video, you would, let's say, use only 2 ports here that are wired, and the other 2 ports you would leave empty, and the wireless cameras could connect to them. So for anyone using an 8-channel NVR, 16 or 32, the same would work. You would basically use some of the ports, and the remaining ports, or those remaining channels, they could accommodate wireless cameras as well. So the next step is first connecting your wired cameras. So in a hybrid wired and wireless cameras where your primary recorder is a PoE NVR, the first step is to connect your wired cameras, and that's actually the simplest step. Because all it takes is you just take a cable and connect it to your cameras. That's how easy our PoE systems are. They're plug and play with the cameras we sell. The recorders talk plug and play to the cameras. You don't have to configure anything as long as that cable is coming directly from the camera into the back of the NVR. So let me show you how. I've got this blue cable here. I'm going to connect it to port 1. And this is a network cable, just in case you don't know. This is a computer network cable. You run this over to your camera. And in my case, here I've got my PoE camera, and I'm gonna connect the camera to this pigtail. Now, for those who aren't familiar, and this is your first time doing a security camera system with PoE cameras and wireless cameras, there are two connections. You don't have to use this connection, but don't cut it off either. Leave it alone. If you're using a junction box to mount your camera, enclose it inside of the junction box. But please do not cut any pigtails. Here are gold pins inside your camera's connection. These are vital for connectivity. If these get rusted or you break them, the camera will no longer work. This is PoE connectivity. I'm going to take my camera and I'm going to connect it right here. And for purposes of demonstration, I'm just going to put my favorite bottle of Windex in the camera's view so you can see when the video pops up from the camera. It takes seconds, so as soon as you connect the camera to the cable and into the NVR, it takes maybe 1 to 2 minutes for the NVR to talk via the plug-and-play protocol and connect to the camera. And here we go. After about 1.5 minutes, video instantly popped up on my monitor screen showing the nice Windex bottle in the view. It's easy as that. And you can, in this manner, connect multiple cameras as long as, again, the wired connection is coming directly from the camera into the NVR. Pops up immediately. Requires no configuration from the user as long as you're using our NVR and our cameras. It's that simple. And once the camera's working, I'll show you a little bit of how the monitor interface looks like. So here I have my monitor a little bit closer to the camera. All I'm doing is using a mouse. Okay, it comes with the NVR, and I'm clicking on the menus, and you can see my wire even move in there in the video because I have a little bit of it in front of the camera. I can do right click, go to main menu, and I can see a lot of different things in there, menu options, and then I can change the views. So depending on if you have one camera or several on the channel amounts of your NVR, you can go through different views. This also lets you do playback if you want it. Go to main menu, go to search, and you can play back video as well. That's from me connecting the camera just seconds ago. It's pretty user intuitive, not hard to use at all. Now let's dive into how to connect a wireless camera. Unfortunately, it's not plug and play. You do have to do some configuration, and we're going to show you how to do that right now. So in the next step, what we're going to show you is how to connect a wireless camera. An overview before I turn the NVR around to make things a little bit more simple. And let me just kind of go over what we're going to do. Our wireless camera has an antenna. Ultimately, it's going to transmit through this back to the router. You see the antennas right there. Router, of course, can be far away from the camera as long as you're getting a decent Wi-Fi signal. The camera here has two connections on it. It has a DC. Let me pick it up and show this to you. This is a DC connection. This comes from a 12-volt power supply. To use any wireless cameras, you need to have power nearby and connect a 12-volt DC power adapter that ultimately plugs into the wall. The length of this cord that's going back to my surge suppressor is about 3 feet long. You can extend it using special wire that's 18 gauge to sustain the voltage transfer without losing voltage along the line. And this is a network connection, but this is not PoE. It doesn't get power through it. This is only for data. It looks the same, but it has a different function in this compared to a PoE camera. So this will never get connected directly into the NVR because it's not going to power up through that. It's not PoE. Again, this will not get connected directly into the NVR because it's not PoE. What's going to happen is we're going to configure the camera first by connecting it to our router and using our laptop to configure it so it can talk to the router, and then the NVR can talk to it on the same network. So I've turned around my NVR to make things a little bit cleaner for you to understand what I'm doing here. This is the NVR. This is a router that has Wi-Fi on it. That's why it has antennas on it. Those antennas will ultimately talk to my wireless camera through its antenna. But right now, my camera cannot just talk to the router because it's not configured. So we're going to do some configuration. So these are professional products. That's why you see a lot of cables here. It doesn't look like those pretty commercials you see from big box stores or big name brands that say, oh, all you need to do is scan a QR code, because those are home use cameras, not as reliable as what we're going to show you here. So this is a professional wireless camera and needs to be configured, and that's why you need a computer to configure it. Now when you buy from us, we will configure the camera for you if you'd like us to. And all you need to do is then just go and mount the camera and run the wire for power to it. And all you need to do is just get the wired cameras connected to the wired portion, turn on the wireless cameras. Of course, you've mounted them and connected the power to them. When you turn everything on, it just works. So this is meant to be informational in case you're wondering how to set this up and you're making a purchasing decision to understand what you're getting yourself into and why to buy from us, because we do all of this for you so you don't have to. And we'll teach you how to get a system up and running, and that's how we've done it for years. So here, let me explain to you what we're going to do next, and I'm going to go over first the anatomy of a router. A lot of people don't understand a router, a switch, an access point, a repeater. This is just a router. It gets internet coming in through one port right there, the blue one. Let me zoom in and show you. So now I've zoomed in. Let's go over the connections. The blue connection here, it's a network cable coming in from the main modem you have in your home for broadband internet. Hardwired internet is preferred for the best viewing experience remotely. The cameras are not talking to the internet. They're talking over through the local network. In fact, I don't even need this cable because it all talks locally over the local area network. I will proceed with calling that LAN. So all this equipment we have talks over the LAN. You don't need an internet connection. It never sends data to the cloud unless you tell it to. Or if you decide to do a QR code based viewing method to remotely view your system. So if you want to watch your system from the internet, then you've got to have an internet connection and plug this into that internet. Second thing is power supply for the router. And these are two connections that are going on the LAN. One is going to go to my camera, the red one. The red cable, I'm going to have it go to the wireless camera so I can talk to it through my computer. And this is going to the NVR, which I showed you before. So this was connected to the LAN port on the NVR, not one of the 4 grouped PoE ports on the NVR. So now let me show you how to configure your wireless camera to this router, this Wi-Fi router. To connect the wireless camera, again, I'll go over that. Connect it first using its power adapter. Connect it to the DC input on the camera. Got my power supply, got my connection, plug it in. In case you're watching us from overseas, these are usually 110, 220 compatible, so the camera will still turn on. All this does is takes 110 to 220 volt AC power input from a hardwired ground connection. And what I mean by that is you're not using a generator. So you put this on clean power outlet, converts it to 12 volt DC clean power. Connect this to your surge suppressor. So I'm going to connect it here. Once you do that, the camera is powering on. The next thing I'm going to do is connect the camera to my router. The reason I have my router turned around is so you can see which cable I'm using. It's from one of the LAN ports, not the internet port, but from the LAN port. Now I'm going to take this red cable and do a connection right to my camera. This is so that I can now use my laptop to configure this camera so that Wi-Fi can talk to the Wi-Fi.
Now we're on our laptop computer and we're going to show how to connect the Wi-Fi camera to the Wi-Fi router so the NVR can search that Wi-Fi router for that Wi-Fi or wireless camera. So in this video I'm going to show Edge. You can use any web browser, but in this video I'm going to also show how to use Edge IE mode in case you want to see the video from the Wi-Fi camera. So the first step is actually going to be to type in the IP address for the camera. It's going to be 192.168.1.108, and it may be also 1.109. You want to refer to your configuration document or the label on the top of the camera's box that shows what its wired IP address is. So 109 did not work, so that means that my camera's wired IP address is 108. So again, we're accessing the wired IP address for the camera so we can join it to the Wi-Fi network and then access it wirelessly from either the NVR or from a web browser. Now I'm going to log into the camera. I'm just using the default username and password. Again, this information will be found on the label on the box for your camera. And then I need to click the login button. So this one actually works in the new browser, which is Microsoft Edge. But if I was on Internet Explorer mode, by clicking Internet Explorer mode up here, after enabling it in the Edge settings, by going to the settings and then default browser tab, this is where you would enable IE mode and click allow and then reboot your browser. I already have it enabled and I relaunched the page in Internet Explorer mode. Then I would need to re-log in and then download the plugin. So it's going to ask me to download the plugin. And then this web interface has more features than the regular Edge, Chrome, Firefox, or Safari web interface. So I'm going to go ahead and install this plugin. It's going to run through a quick Windows installer. And now I have the same video, only this time I have more playback controls. So again, this is if you want to access the web interface of your camera and access these extra playback controls. This particular camera I'm working with does also work in regular Edge mode and then those modern browsers that I mentioned, Firefox, Chrome, Safari. Now to actually join it to the Wi-Fi network, I need to go to the Settings tab or Setting tab at the top right hand side. And then I need to go into Network. And then I need to go to Wi-Fi. Once you click the Wi-Fi tab, it should automatically search the network or area around you for the networks. If it does not, then you need to click Refresh or click the Search SSID button. SSID simply means Wi-Fi name, as listed here in the list. So here are the SSIDs in my area. And then I have named my Wi-Fi for the Wi-Fi router. So I'm going to go ahead and double click my Wi-Fi and then enter in the password for my Wi-Fi. If you get the Wi-Fi router from us, this information will be found on the configuration document. If you did not get a Wi-Fi router from us, it will be your Wi-Fi's password for your router, the same one you've entered in on your laptop computer or on your smartphone. So I'm going to click the connection button. What this is going to do is enter in this information into my camera and tell the camera to join my Wi-Fi. So it's now connected to my Wi-Fi, and this is the IP address that my router provided to it. Now what you're going to want to do is set your own static or manual IP address, so in case the camera reboots, it does not get a new IP address and then your NVR doesn't know how to find it. So in order to do that, I need to go to the TCP/IP tab, and in here there's an Ethernet card. Now this is misleading because there's a wired and wireless Ethernet card, and technically for wireless you do not need Ethernet, but you need to select the wireless Ethernet card. And as we can see, it is set to DHCP. Now this is just technical jargon for automatic. And as I mentioned, we're going to want to set a manual, not automatic IP address. Again, to prevent power outages from causing the NVR to lose the camera. So I'm going to click the static button, and then I'm going to enter in my own static IP address. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to set it to 50. So I've set it to 192.168.1.50. Now if you're on a separate or different IP address scheme, which you may be if you're using your own router, then you'll of course want to leave these first 3 sections alone and add a unique identifier for the 4th section. and then the rest of the information should be pre-filled for you from the DHCP or automatic option. So again, all I've done is change this fourth section here on the IP address section of the settings. So the IP address here, and then the fourth section of the IP address. I'm going to click Save. And now if I go back to the Wi-Fi tab, click the refresh button, it will now update it to say 50. Now the next step would be to add this Wi-Fi camera to my NVR using this IP address and the camera's username and password. Since I have set this to a manual or static IP address, my NVR will always look for the 1.50 IP address. So the next step is to add the camera to the NVR. So first I'm going to right click main menu. It's going to ask me to log in. I'm just using the graphical user password that's found on the top of my NVR. And then in order to add the camera over the network, I need to click the camera button on the bottom left hand side under setting. And then here we see at the bottom we already have our wired camera plugged in here to the first port, so port 1. If you have any other wired cameras connected to your NVR, then you'll see them listed here with their internal IP address. Now this is an internal IP address for the NVR's built-in PoE ports that my colleague showed you. And when I went to the camera list page, it actually went ahead and searched for my camera. Now I still have my camera plugged into the wire, so here we can see the wired IP address that I showed you in the last step, and then we can see the wireless IP address. So if I go ahead and unplug my camera from the router, I'll no longer see that 108 IP address. I went ahead and disconnected the Ethernet cable from my router going to the camera. So now, like I mentioned, if I click the search device button once more, I will no longer see that 108 IP address and I only see the 50. Now there's two ways to add. I can either click this checkbox and click the add button. What this is going to do is automatically connect or add the camera to my device list or added devices section. So it went ahead and did that and it automatically logged in. Now let's say you receive a red status, then you're going to want to back out and see what that says. So if it has a little text box field here or it says invalid username or password, then you need to make sure that you right click, go back into the camera page, and then you're going to want to click the edit icon, which is essentially the other way that you could add the camera. And I'll show that to you here in a moment. But first, if it showed you the password error, you would come to the password field, delete all of the text here, and then enter in the password that either you've set on the camera yourself or refer to the config document if we set the password on the camera. For the most part, you should be able to automatically add it. However, I'll show how you can do a manual add. So I'm going to cancel out of there, go back into camera, and then click the manual add button. So in here, I would need to manually add the IP address information, for example, 1.50, and then again type that password in. And what that would do is then create another entry if I were to actually go through with manually adding the camera. And essentially what it would do is look like this. So you would just have that added as a manual entry. So that's the two ways to add the Wi-Fi camera to the NVR after configuring it for the network. You would come into the camera list page, click search device, and then either do the automatic add by checking it and then clicking the add button, or doing a manual add by manually entering in the information.
So here I'm back on the monitor attached to my NVR, and I'll show you here that the first port where it says D1 in front of it, that's the wired camera connected directly into my NVR. And the second one, you see D2, if you look further down, it has an IP address. That's 192.168.1.50. That's over my local network, my LAN. So let me zoom out and show you what I've got going here. Now I've got my wireless camera here talking wirelessly to the antennas on my router. Notice there's no cable connected here. I'll lift it up and show you. No lies here. So all it has is that power connection, wirelessly talking to the router, and then the NVR has that gray cable which goes back to the router here, and it's talking through the router to the camera. It's fetching the video from the camera. I'm going to go back to my screen here on my NVR. Using my trusty mouse connected here to my NVR, I'm basically going to right click out of this menu and I can see my camera right here. As you can see, that camera, which is wired in, is producing this video right there. And this wireless camera, looking back at the wired camera, you can watch the video there. And the video is real time. And I'll show you how good it is. Obviously, the camera right now is right next to the router, so the video will be phenomenal. There's going to be some sort of lag there. That's because it's wireless technology and it's IP based, but there's a minimal amount of lag, about a millisecond or so. And then the wired camera, I'll show you what kind of lag you can expect there. Same kind of lag, in fact. So let's compare that again. So it's a minimal amount of lag there. Wireless, of course, has a little bit more. Depending on your use case scenario, wireless cameras can be a really good fit for what you're doing. Obviously, the times are synced on the cameras, so whatever video footage you get will be admissible as long as you have your time set correctly on your NVR. So that's just a full, in-depth guide on how to set up a hybrid wired and wireless security camera system using PoE cameras and wireless IP cameras over a network. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. We'll be more than happy to help you.
If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.